Okay, so I'm just going to share. Okay. I'm just going to share my screen there.
Oh,
Second.
perfect. Try again there. It might not have turned up.
Okay, there we go. Um, okay, can everyone see the slides?
Yes, I can. Thank you very much, James.
Okay, perfect. Bear with me now 1 second. I'm just going to move this so that I can see. Okay, perfect. So yeah, I suppose first of all, thanks Kieran for having me, and thanks everyone at GFI for having me. Um, yeah, so as Kieran mentioned, I'm going to talk a little bit about basically using digital photography as a non-invasive method of sampling Atlantic puffin chicks diet at multiple Irish colonies. So I'll probably talk for about half an hour to 40 minutes, and then we should have plenty of time then at the end for questions. So yeah, I suppose if people do have questions, if you could hold it till the end, that would be ideal, and then we can go through it then. So yeah, I suppose firstly, just to kind of give a little bit of an overview or kind of context on what I'll be talking about. Yeah, so this talk will look at research that I conducted as part of an MSc program in applied coastal and marine management down in UCC. Yeah, so the research was undertaken for my dissertation project, and yes, was as such didn't receive any funding or anything like that. The research it represents the most comprehensive data set on the diet of Irish puffin chicks to date, at least that I'm aware of, or at least that's published anyway. The project was supervised by Dr. Paul Holloway down in the geography department in UCC, and all photos were taken under license from MPWS. So I suppose simple enough concept. Basically, the rationale was to use, I suppose, some existing photography skills I had, as well as equipment that I already owned, to try and conduct a diet survey of Atlantic puffin chicks. So essentially to try and photograph as many bill loads as possible. So when I say bill loads, I mean like what we see here in this image. So this was taken on Great Salty. There's kind of a number of prey items there. This one here was on Puffin Island off Kerry. So there's essentially just taking lots of photos like this, and then like this one back then on Great Salty, which has a kind of variety of different prey items. There was no shortage of outtakes, I suppose. There was thousands of photos taken in total. This little fella, unfortunately, didn't make the cut. He didn't make the team, despite his best efforts. Maybe next year. But yeah, I suppose just to give a little bit of kind of background on seabirds in general, just to give I suppose, a kind of broader context and kind of where they're at. Seabirds are among the most threatened groups of vertebrates, with 43% of the 362 species globally are classified as either threatened or near threatened with extinction by the International Union for Conservation of Nature, or the IUCN. So of the 314 species of seabird for which current population trends are known, 56% are currently in decline. So widely accepted as good bioindicators, seabirds provide insight into the health of a number of trophic levels of marine ecosystems. So trophic levels essentially, I suppose, layers of the food chain, if you like, within marine ecosystems. The impact of overfishing, in particular on seabirds, particularly with pelagic species, so that's a species that live at sea, is expected to increase over the coming decades, with stock pressures on commercially exploited coastal forage fish anticipated to intensify. So the most recent multi-species seabird count revealed that Irish seabird populations are in relatively good shape, with two notable exceptions, however. So firstly, black-legged kittiwakes, and then secondly, Atlantic puffins, which obviously is what I'm going to be talking a little bit about today. So Atlantic puffin populations in Ireland were shown to have dropped by 28% since the last survey, since they were last surveyed in 2002. I suppose there's a number of things kind of driving that decline. One, I suppose, a key consideration, or it's something to consider, is that adult puffins will tend to maintain their survival at the expense of breeding success, with reduced immature recruitment likely driving overall population decline. So what I mean by that is essentially that it's not just breeding success or poor breeding success that's driving population decline. So recruitment refers to basically the combination of both breeding success, the chicks, reaching adulthood, and then what's called natal dispersal. So when they kind of will then join a colony. And then I suppose more specifically, on the breeding success part of things. So poor body condition of breeding adults coming into the breeding season, then compounded by local prey shortages during the breeding season, is reducing the overall breeding success. So just a little bit on puffins. So Atlantic puffins, they're a long-lived species. They typically reach sexual maturity in around year 5, and will often live till around 20. As far as I know, the oldest recorded Atlantic puffin is, I believe, 36 years old. So yeah, they live quite a while. Puffins are highly abundant across the North Atlantic, with a total global population estimated to be in and around 20 million. I suppose health warning that that figure was from a book published in 2011, so it's likely a lower number now, unfortunately. So basically, they nest in colonies of burrows on steep cliffs or islands during the summer, and are entirely pelagic during the non-breeding periods of the winter, which essentially means that for 8-9 months of the year, puffins are floating around somewhere in the middle of the North Atlantic, and they won't touch land again until they come back to nest and breed in the kind of late spring. Puffins will typically choose a mate for life, although it's not currently known whether pairs will overwinter together, or whether they'll meet up again or kind of reconvene once they come back to the colony to nest and breed. So yeah, we're a little unclear on that. Puffins are in decline across their global range, and as I mentioned, they're one of 2 species of seabirds nesting in Ireland that are found to be in decline. Being both a ground nesting and single clutch, so they'll have 1 egg per breeding season. Species, puffins are quite vulnerable to predation, with particular devastation caused by brown rats. We see this in multiple instances, but particularly, I suppose, in an Irish context on Great Salty. Over the past number of years, the colony has been quite badly affected by brown rat predation. It seems to have turned a corner, and they seem to have kind of gotten that, MPWS seem to have gotten that under control, which is great. But yeah, similarly, there was issues on Rathlin as well, where the colony moved from kind of higher up the cliff to right down the bottom of the cliff, where the rats seemingly weren't able to access them. So puffins have one of the highest energetic costs of flight across a number of bird groups, making foraging quite a demanding activity. So they have very small wings for their size. They kind of look like they're not supposed to fly almost. You'll never really see a puffin glide like you will with other birds, except for where you have really strong wind hitting a cliff and you get a kind of an updraft, and then they'll get a kind of a brief, awkward looking glide. Other than in that very specific situation, they have to flap their wings between 300 and 400 times a minute to stay in flight. Diet is thought to play quite a significant role in the species' global decline, although little is known about the diet of Irish populations. We do know, however, that sand eels are a key prey item for puffins throughout the Northeast Atlantic. Adult puffins will typically feed while foraging away from the burrows, i.e. on the water. They're pursuit diving seabirds, which makes sampling their diet in a non-invasive way, and indeed an invasive way, logistically quite difficult. Chick provisioning for puffins, however, is highly visible with multiple prey items typically being carried crossways in their bills, which does provide researchers with an opportunity to survey their diet with quite minimal disturbance. There are differences between adult and chick diet, but there's quite a significant overlap. So adult puffins tend to have a more diverse diet or a more varied diet. However, everything that a puffin chick will eat, the adults will also primarily eat, just along with some other stuff. Chicks are typically fed throughout the day. There tends to be a little bit more activity in the morning and the evening, and then drops off a little bit in the middle of the day. But it'll generally be between 3 and 11 times, which depends on the size of the bill load, as well as the age of the chick. Puffin chick diet is typically, or I suppose traditionally, sampled by a practice known as mist netting, which is basically where chick provisioning adult birds are caught in a net as they return to their burrows, which prompts them to drop the prey items, and then researchers can collect them and record them. Excuse me. There's a number of issues, I suppose, with this, or a number of drawbacks. There's also a number of benefits, but basically, obviously, every bill load that's recorded in this way essentially is a bill load that's not fed to a chick, which I suppose in the context of a species that's in decline is not ideal. So that's kind of the disturbance aspect of it. There's also another issue that what tends to happen is that smaller prey items are underrepresented in this sampling method because they're harder to find once they fall in the grass. So particularly if you have kind of slightly longer vegetation, it's just very hard, needle in a haystack. So yeah, there's benefits in terms of, you've greater kind of taxonomic resolution, so you can really see kind of what species they're eating down to a very specific level. And you can also see kind of how calorie dense, the particular prey item is at that time of the year. Although digital photography has previously been shown to be an effective method of sampling puffin chick diet, it's not particularly common. I suppose most notable exception would be a paper that came out last year, the Owen et al. So that particular paper invited submissions of photographs of chick provisioning puffins from around the UK and Ireland, although there was only one photo submitted from Ireland, which was a photo on Skellig Michael. So there was, I believe, 6 prey items. At the time the Owen paper was published, I was in, I suppose, kind of pitching this idea to my supervisor, and I initially kind of thought, oh, well, they've beat me to it, like I'll find a new idea. But I suppose it turned out to be a blessing in disguise in that it, one, kind of worked as somewhat of a proof of concept, albeit they used a citizen science approach. So people submitted photographs. I was planning on using a more targeted approach, but it hadn't really been employed or hadn't been used in Ireland. So yeah, it actually worked out to be quite a significant help. So yeah, this study then marked the first time that digital photography has been used to sample puffin chick diet across multiple Irish colonies. So in terms of the study areas of the colonies that I looked at, I wanted to choose sites throughout Ireland so as to best, I suppose, capture any variation in prey items throughout the region. So I had initially chosen 5 colonies, but access issues prevented Skellig Michael from being used, i.e. the OPW unfortunately said no. So in the end, I visited 4 sites or 4 colonies. So Rathlin Island up off the north there, and then the Salties down off Wexford in the southeast, and then Puffin Island in Kerry, and then the Cliffs of Moher in Clare. So the Cliffs were the only mainland colony that I visited. In the end, both Rathlin Island and the Cliffs of Moher were unsuitable, as the birds were just too far away to photograph in enough detail. So I'll just give you an example of that. So yeah, obviously you have the Cliffs of Moher there on the left and Rathlin on the right. So these are both taken with the 500mm lens. I don't know if anyone does any photography, but a big lens. So you could obviously see that there's puffins and you could see them going in and out of the burrows, but there certainly wasn't enough clarity to make out what they were holding in their bills or what type of fish. So yeah, neither of those worked, unfortunately. Where it did work, however, was Puffin Island and the Salties. So sort of Puffin Island there on the left. So it's only around 250 meters off the Kerry coast. Yet access is tricky, to say the least. Firstly, you need permission from Birdwatch Ireland to land. There's no public ferries or boats that bring you there. I'm lucky in that I sea kayak, so I was able to paddle there. Landing is quite difficult. Once you're actually on the island, then everything is very steep, lots of loose rock and Manx shearwater burrows all over the island. So it's tricky enough terrain. Then in terms of mixed land cover suitability, so what I mean by that is the part or the image that you can see here. So that portion of the island is where most of the puffins live on the island. The side that you can see here, the kind of grass covered side, the grass is actually quite long because it's relatively sheltered. It's kind of northeast facing. Puffins they're between 18 and 20 centimeters tall. So as soon as the bird would land with prey, I wasn't able to see it. So that was quite an issue. It meant that I had to try and photograph them in the air, which is doable, but takes a lot longer and is a little bit time consuming and a bit tricky. The other side of that ridgeline that you can see, though, was much more exposed to southwesterlies, which meant a lot of exposed rock and all the vegetation was much shorter. So that worked pretty well. So that's where the majority of the photos that I got at Puffin Island were taken. So in total, I got 48 bill loads, and that amounted to 365 prey items. So then at the Salty Islands, so this particular photo was taken on Great Salty, so around 6 kilometers off the Wexford coast. Great Salty, it's very easily accessed. There's regular ferry services to and from, which also means that the birds are very well accustomed to human presence, and they'll come and just land right next to you and really don't seem very bothered by people at all. Little Salty is a little bit different. You need to get permission from the owner, and again, there's no public boat service there. It also means that the birds there are quite flighty, so you have to kind of hide in the bracken to get photos of them there, which meant that the majority of photos from the Salties that I got were on Great Salty. So there was 57 bill loads photographed, amounting to 588 prey items in total. So in terms of then, I suppose once I had taken the photos, then defining the different categories of prey that I wanted to look at. So I chose the categories in line with the framework outlined by the Owen et al. Paper. There was initially 6 categories chosen, but there were no gadoids recorded at either site. So just to give kind of an example of kind of each of the types of prey basically that I was looking at. So image A there Those are non-transparent sand eels, so basically adult sand eels. So these would be kind of I suppose the classic postcard image that you see puffins flying in with the bill full of fish. That's what they would generally be. And then moving to the right, so in image B, those are transparent sand eels. So essentially baby ones of image A. Image C, those are clupeids. So they would be either herring or sprat. It's very hard to differentiate from this or from an image basically. And then image D, those are rockling. Again, hard to I suppose define what species they are, but based on other studies, it's likely that they're three-bearded rockling. And then image E, so there's a bunch of adult sand eels, but the unusual one is this kind of white thing hanging down, which I actually thought was plastic when I took the photo. And it was only when I got home I noticed quite a large eyeball. So it's actually a squid. So that was the only squid that was recorded between the two sites. And that was on the salties. So then in terms of the image analysis, basically, firstly, I got the number of prey items per category were recorded for each bill load in a spreadsheet. And then the prey item length was manually measured to the nearest half bill length. So that was essentially getting a piece of card and holding it up to the screen for each image, because obviously it changed depending on the image, but holding it up to the bill, marking the bill length, and then kind of offering it up to each fish or each prey item. This obviously gets kind of trickier if measuring the bill length gets trickier if the bird is facing the camera. And then I suppose conversely, offering it up to the fish gets a little bit easier when it's looking at the camera. But when you look at enough of the images, you get fairly good at estimating it to the nearest half bill length. You also kind of use, I say, the size of the eyeball of the fish, the taper of the body, where the pectoral fin is, the size of the tail. So once I had that all recorded, I then used the average adult puffin bill length, which is 2.94 centimeters. Was used to basically estimate the prey length in centimeters. And then once I had that, I used the fish length weight relationship formula to estimate the prey item biomass in grams. So there's different published constants for different groups of prey items that you essentially put it in, and then that'll give you an estimated weight. So then in terms of the prey composition, which is basically what type of fish or type of prey they were feeding on, I was able to show quite significant variation in prey composition between the two colonies. So the salty islands consisted primarily of non-transparent sand eels, so adult sand eels, while Puffin Island was mainly clupeids and to a lesser extent transparent sand eels. So there was no transparent sand eels recorded at either of the salty islands. So you can see, I suppose, from the graphic there that the difference in the type of prey that they were eating between two colonies, both on the south coast of Ireland, was pretty stark, quite significant. They were only 9 days apart in terms of the survey time, so they're very close together, geographically relatively close together as well. Yeah, quite a distinct difference. So in terms of the overall biomass and how that related to the overall composition between the two sites, biomass was broadly consistent with composition at the salty islands, while Puffin Island showed more of a difference between these two metrics. So I suppose an example there, so transparent sand eels made up 34% of prey items at Puffin Island in terms of the number of items, yet they only amounted to 11% of the biomass at the site. So that's quite a variation, and essentially the transparent sand eels, so there was lots of them, but they're very, very small and quite insignificant in terms of energy, I suppose. Then down at the bill load, how biomass differed. So just on the graphic there, site A in the pink and site B in the blue. So it's, I suppose, quite a marked difference between the two. So bill loads at the salty islands weighed an average of 8.6 grams, while Puffin Island bill loads weighed an average of 5.6 grams. It is, however, worth noting that clupids, which is what they're feeding on at Puffin Island, are much more energy dense or calorie rich, if you like. So I suppose less of them in terms of weight is needed to adequately provision chicks. Then for the number of prey items per bill load, so site A in pink again and site B in blue, quite a significant variation between the number of prey items between the two colonies. If you look there at the blue, so the figures for site B, which is Puffin Island, there's a few kind of outliers there to the right of the screen. So these would have been bill loads that were either exclusively made up of transparent sand eels or primarily, which is why I chose to use the median number as opposed to the mean. That was more reflective of the kind of the actual variation. So the median number of prey items then at the salties was 11, while Puffin Island had a median number of 5.5. So some of the key findings then from the study, puffin chicks at Puffin Island are feeding on more clupids than at any other of 27 surveyed colonies across Ireland and the UK. And that 27 surveyed colonies was from the Owen paper, so relatively recent as well and quite comprehensive. I suppose, yeah, this suggests that clupids could be more significant in Irish puffin chick diet than previously understood. Puffin chick diet at the Salty Islands is predominantly made up of adult sand eels, which is very similar to that of chicks in Scomar in Wales, where puffin populations are actually increasing. So Scomar is around 100 kilometers southwest of the Salties. So yeah, I suppose that's quite a positive sign for the future of the salty populations. Yeah, then for, I suppose, the wider kind of conservation implications of what I was looking at, I suppose firstly, the high number of transparent sand eels recorded at Puffin Island suggests a localized reduction in the availability of adult sand eels. Now, this reduced availability of this key prey item for multiple marine predators in the North Atlantic could signal a localized shift in the species phenology, reduced abundance, or indeed a combination of factors. So just on basically what phenology means, or in this context, it's essentially a species state, at what given stage a species is at in its life cycle relating to, say, the time of year. So I give an example that relates to this. So one of the reasons that puffins, generally speaking, eat a lot of sand eels or adult sand eels is because at the time of year that puffin chicks need most food or need the most provisioning, sand eels tend to be their most abundant. Also at that time of year, sand eels tend to be their most calorie dense. So it kind of matches up. Okay, so what happens if there's a shift in one of the species phenology? So say if puffins for some reason started laying their eggs a month or hatching their eggs a month earlier, or if sand eels started hatching a month later in the season, there would be what's called a phenological mismatch. So the two species wouldn't be able to interact as, I suppose, they historically have. So I suppose there's further research needed to kind of interrogate that, see if that's the case in Puffin Island. But yeah, it's likely a combination of factors. What we do know, however, is that temporary but typically rapid increases in sea surface temperatures resulting from marine heat waves are already impacting marine species distributions at a global level. We also know that sand eel abundance and phenology are expected to be further impacted by climate change, However, there is a lack of clarity in the literature surrounding, I suppose, longer term climate driven phenological mismatches. So yeah, I suppose areas then of further research. Firstly, I suppose to use a similar approach at more colonies around Ireland, specifically Skellig Michael would be ideal, which would allow for a sampling of 69% of Irish puffin populations. Also to continue this method over multiple years and throughout the breeding season to better account for within season variation. So one of the things the Owen paper was able to show really well was how, as a puffin's breeding season or nesting season progresses, how the prey items tends to change. They tend to feed on different items. So clupeids tend to become more prevalent towards the end of the season, as adult sand eels will rebury in the sand. So being able to use this method throughout the breeding season would offer, I suppose, just greater clarity on basically what exactly is happening at Puffin Island. So it would offer insights into the potential shifts in phenology and abundance of sand eels, which are, as I mentioned, a key prey item for multiple species in the Northeast Atlantic. It also, I suppose, highlights the potential of using sediment grain size to better predict and model sand eels' distribution and hence availability as a prey item, since they're highly habitat selective regarding sediment. So sand eels will spend most of their year buried in the sand, but they only bury in a certain sediment or certain grain size. So if there's even a very small bit of clay or silt present, that they won't bury. So I suppose particularly in light or in the context of Ireland's offshore renewable targets as well as marine protected area targets, I suppose having a better understanding of where exactly this key prey item or this key species, where exactly they are, I suppose, to better protect them and kind of minimize impact through development is obviously quite important. I suppose then the outlook for Irish puffins. So it's not all doom and gloom, thankfully. So there was, I suppose, a notable increase in puffin numbers observed this season on both salty islands, with anecdotal evidence that eradication on Great Salty by MPWS is starting to pay dividends. Although tentative cause for optimism, the colony's apparent success has brought with it an increase in visitors and human disturbance to the colony, with more formal management measures urgently needed at the site. So to give a few examples, I suppose it's a good complaint in one way, but the path that traditionally was on the outside of the inside, if you like, of the colony, the main colony on Great Salty, the birds have started burrowing on either side of the path now. So it now runs right through the colony. So people with the best will in the world are, sticking to the path, but marching right through the middle of the colony. Like I saw people kind of sitting on top of burrows. I saw burrows being partially collapsed, kids chasing birds. I saw someone put a pretzel down a burrow to try and lure it out to take a photo. So yeah, definitely some management measures needed on Great Salty. The other thing is, so while the apparent reduced availability of adult sand eels at Puffin Island, it certainly warrants further interrogation. Chicks are currently being quite well provisioned with an alternative energy-rich food source in the form of clupeids. So I suppose no immediate cause for concern. So the longer-term impact of this alternative prey item, that longer-term impact that it will have on the colony's success is, however, unclear. I suppose the last kind of positive outlook is, Ireland's commitment to protecting 30% of its marine territory by 2030, offers tentative hope, with much needed legislation eagerly awaited. Although I can't help but be somewhat cynical that it might not be a number one priority for this government. So I suppose in conclusion, digital photography was found to be highly site specific, with half of colonies visited found not to be suitable for this method. Where appropriate, however, digital photography can indeed be used to good effect to sample the diet of Atlantic puffin chicks with minimal disturbance. Puffin Island is an outlier across Ireland in the UK, with further research needed to see if diet trends are consistent throughout the breeding season. And then I suppose lastly, that sampling puffin chick diet in this way can offer broader insight into marine ecosystems. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing. We should have plenty of time for questions.